Tonight, APC chieftains meet with President-elect Bola Tinubu in Abuja, assures that the incoming administration will not fail to deliver on its manifesto of renewed hope. As United Nations commemorate World Malaria Day, the World Health Organization says the R21 malaria vaccine, given provisional approval by Nigeria's drug regulatory authorities, still needs to undergo more trials. Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, and the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development sue the National Broadcasting Commission and two others over the 5 million naira fine imposed on Channels Television.
On business news tonight, Fitch Ratings sees Nigeria's 2023 economic growth lower at 2.3% due to impact of acute cash shortage of the naira within the first quarter.
In the world of sports, Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta demands absolute perfection from his players in the Premier League title clash at Manchester City on Wednesday night.
And from Abuja, President Muhammadu Buhari says regular meetings by members of the Gulf of Guinea Commission is crucial towards achieving peace and security in the region.
And in international news from London, the US President Joe Biden has formally announced he will run for re-election in a campaign video release, setting up a likely rematch with predecessor Donald Trump.
We begin from the nation's capital, where a day after returning to the country, Nigeria's president-elect Bola Tinubu has been meeting with some members of the party, the All Progressives Congress. Some of those who met with the president-elect at his residence in Abuja today told Channels Television that the incoming administration will not fail to deliver on its manifesto for renewed hope.
It's a beehive of activities as stalwarts of the All Progressives Congress, APC, thronged the residence of the president-elect in Abuja. After holding private talks with the president-elect, a member of the party was elected senator for Benue North-East constituency in 2011, assures Nigerians of good governance.
Nigerians should expect to have a 100-yard dash when this new government comes into place. The thoughts and all the planning that's been going on behind the scene is such that we have very strong belief that this government will hit the ground running.
Two former governors who also visited the president-elect shared their thoughts on the issues of the leadership of the 10th National Assembly.
We are in a situation where we have to comply by the spirit of the Constitution. A situation where everybody will have a sense of belonging and self-determination. It's very, very necessary that if we have to have a stable government, a very peaceful separation of powers, we also have to consider what the Constitution says about giving everybody a sense of belonging.
The issue of Senate presidency is a function of the senators, and particularly all the senators-elect, including those who are returning, and they are all my colleagues. I've had the privilege of serving the Senate before as a minority leader, and so any senator should be ready, if his colleagues so wish, to avail himself to be used as a Senate president. So the chances for somebody like me will be very high because of the fact that my colleagues already know my track record.
The president-elect, after a one-month vacation in Europe, returned to Nigeria on Monday, the 24th of April, to a tumultuous welcome by his teeming supporters.
The Labour Party on Tuesday raised an alarm over an action taken by a self-acclaimed factional chairman of the party, Mr. Lamidi Apapa, asking the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal to dismiss all cases by his party's presidential candidate, Peter Obi, against the victory of Bola Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress in the February 25th, 2023 election. The Labour Party Acting National Publicity Secretary, Obiora Ifo, in a statement, urged the tribunal in Abuja to disregard the antics by Mr. Lamidi Apapa, who is a suspended Deputy National Chairman of the Labour Party. According to him, quote, "We are by this statement informing all forms of judiciary, including the tribunals and courts, to ignore the ignoble antics of these compromised suspended members of the party. We are also calling on the police, the DSS and the EFCC to arrest these enemies of democracy." On the trial of the pastor of the House on the Rock Refuge Church, Abuja, Uche Aigbe, on charges of alleged unlawful possession of firearm has been stalled due to absence of his counsel in court. Well, at the day's proceedings, Magistrate Abdulaziz Ismail drew the attention of the court to a letter by Uzuku seeking adjournment of the trial at his instance. Magistrate Ismail noted that the adjournment was at the instance of the defense counsel, whom he said was absent in court due to a matter he had at an election tribunal. He adjourned the matter in the interest of justice until May the 2nd for continuation of trial in the criminal charges. The police had charged Mr. Uche Aigbe, Promise Ukachukwu and Olakunle Ogunleye with criminal conspiracy, illegal possession of prohibited firearm, inciting disturbance and criminal intimidation, to which they pleaded not guilty. Specifically, police alleged that the defendants, all of House on the Rock, the Refuge, Abuja, conspired to illegally acquire an AK-47 rifle on February 12, 2023. The prosecution counsel, Assistant Police Commissioner Mr. James Idachaba, had informed the court that the defendants got the firearm from Inspector Musa Audu, attached to Weir Division, posted on guard on duty at the said church. Today is World Malaria Day, a day set aside in recognition of global efforts to control malaria. While several efforts are being made to achieve a total eradication of the disease, the recent approval of the R21 Matrix M malaria vaccine has raised some hopes. Well, the World Health Organization, however, states that the R21 Matrix M malaria vaccine still needs to undergo more trials. The WHO's country representative, Dr. Walter Mulumbo, who gave this indication today, made it clear at a media parley at the United Nations House in Abuja to celebrate the Africa Vaccine Week, World Immunization Week, and World Malaria Day that several trials are still pending for the World Health Organization to recommend the vaccine. Our correspondent, Kayla Magua, tells us more.
Africa Vaccine Week provides African governments with an opportunity to appraise themselves on the progress and challenges faced in their attempts to ensure access to life-saving vaccines, especially for children on the continent.
Because you don't have symptoms.
Nigeria is part of the 9 countries in Africa that contribute to 79% of Africa's zero-dose children. Nigeria has about 6.2 million children unvaccinated between 2019 and 2021. The World Health Organization is organizing this media parley in Abuja to explain why concerted effort is needed to bring down the figures. The conversation narrows down to the prevention and management of malaria. The World Health Organization's country representative to Nigeria, Dr. Walter Mulumbo, goes on to speak on the World Health Organization-approved RTSS malaria vaccine. He says it has drastically reduced the malaria deaths in some African countries.
In Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi, those are the countries that first introduced the RTSS vaccine, where nearly 1.5 million children have received the vaccine through a WHO-coordinated pilot program. And there is a substantial decrease in hospitalization for severe malaria and a drop in child death in those countries.
On the NAFDAC provisionally approved R21 Matrix malaria vaccine, he clarifies that more trials must be done before it is approved for use by the World Health Organization.
To get full approval, you need approval from WHO. And that particular vaccine is still being studied. WHO does not have the full complement of data and information to enable it to, to endorse it or recommend it for use.
the number of deaths in Africa caused by malaria and non-vaccination of Africa's children is enough for the continent to be ready for whatever vaccine is provided to fight malaria, especially here in Nigeria. The need for policy and proper funding from governments in the region is also stressed by the World Health Organization at today's event to ensure that these numbers are brought down drastically. And as a new government comes into place in Nigeria, it is hoped that this will be a priority for them. From the UN House in Abuja, Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, Nigeria's federal government is calling for an urgent scale-up of joint efforts for the eradication of malaria in the country. The Minister of Health told a press conference to mark the 2023 World Malaria Day in Abuja that the recent global report on malaria prevalence points to the urgent need for stronger collaboration with the government in interventions to eradicate the disease. And this report highlights the burden and efforts to eradicate this disease in Nigeria.
On April 25 every year, countries around the globe mark the World Malaria Day to raise awareness of its prevalence and the need to invest in the eradication of the disease. This is the reason the Ministry of Health is organizing this conference in Abuja. Malaria is spread when an infected Anopheles mosquito bites a person. Although the disease is preventable, the 2021 World Health Organization report reveals that it accounts for 619,000 deaths globally. The report also reveals that 5 African countries, namely Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Niger, and Tanzania, account for over 50% of global malaria deaths in 2021. The federal government is calling for an urgent scale-up of interventions for the eradication of malaria in Nigeria.
The recent World Malaria Report calls for a redoubling of efforts by all to ensure increased access to malaria interventions by all Nigerians.
Over the years, the government's interventions have focused more on prevention and control of the disease, with minimal results, as shown by the 2021 Nigeria Malaria Indicator Survey. According to the National Center for Biotechnology Information Report, Nigeria still records an estimated 51 million cases of malaria and 207,000 deaths annually. However, the recent malaria vaccine that is still in its clinical trial phase could be the good news many Nigerians are waiting for.
This R21 malaria vaccine was granted a provisional approval. The Joint Committee recognized the importance of effective malaria vaccine. This R21 vaccine has 75% protection.
When will this game changer be available in the country?
One of the things that the Serum Institute of India contact said is that Nigeria will get a donation first as quickly as possible. But what we do in NAFDAC is to ensure that the product is safe, is of quality, and is efficacious.
I think it is because of the effectiveness of the vaccine. That is why the regulator, NAFDAC, has given provisional approval. And like I said in the minister's speech now, based on that, we are anticipating that Nigeria is also going to be, in the phase 4 clinical trials of the vaccine.
Malaria remains a major killer disease in Nigeria. It accounts for over 60% of outpatients' visitation to hospitals in the country, explaining the rationale behind the call to scale up interventions.
In part 2, after the break, we'll get more insights on World Malaria Day and the federal government's efforts at eradicating the disease, as we will be joined by the Director and Head of Surveillance of the National Malaria Eradication Program, Mr. Chukwu Okoronkwo. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our main stories. APC chieftains meet with President-elect Bola Tinubu in Abuja, assures that the incoming administration will not fail to deliver on its manifesto of renewed hope. As United Nations commemorates World Malaria Day, the World Health Organization says the R21 malaria vaccine given provisional approval by Nigeria's drug regulatory authorities still needs to undergo more trials. Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project (SERAP) and the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development sued the National Broadcasting Commission and 2 others over the ₦5 million fine imposed on Channels Television. And U.S. President Joe Biden formally confirmed that he will run for re-election in a campaign video release setting up a likely rematch with predecessor Donald Trump. Staying with the World Malaria Day, according to the 2022 World Malaria Report by the World Health Organization, Nigeria accounts for between 26 to 31% of all malaria cases and deaths globally. In commemoration of the 2023 World Malaria Day, household insecticide brand Mortein Nigeria is championing a campaign across the country to enlighten and help equip people in the fight against the disease.
It's World Malaria Day, and Mortein Nigeria is taking the lead in the fight against the disease with a campaign to sensitize residents in the Obalende area of Lagos Island. With the theme of the year tag, Time to Deliver Zero Malaria, Invest, Innovate, Implement, celebrated Nollywood actress Kate Henshaw, in company of Mortein staff, some medical practitioners, as well as interested residents of Obalende, take to the streets to spread the word about the dangers of malaria. The latter converge here to shed more light about the disease and how to combat it.
It takes the responsibility of the government, notable individuals in the society and corporate organizations to find a way to innovate, to implement, as well as invest. And that is the reason why we must commend these investments.
We all have a stake in this war against malaria. Malaria has been with us for as long as I can remember being born. And the same methods is what we're asking people to do: clean your environment, get rid of stagnant water, sleep under insecticide treated nets, use quality insecticide like Mortein, which kills 100% of mosquitoes.
While the R21 malaria vaccine, which is being given provisional approval by relevant authorities and is yet to be rolled out, some experts are optimistic about its efficacy.
I think it's a monumental development in the sense that this has been a groundbreaking occurrence in the world of science and in malaria prevention. And the promise is that this will prevent malaria deaths and morbidity to a significant extent. So it's a really exciting time for science.
Mortein is a tried and trusted insecticide that has been in Nigeria for over 20 years and has been in the world, in different countries for over 100 years. So for Mortein, we are backed by science, we are effective, and we're a brand that cares. The purpose of our brand is what drives us, and our purpose is to end malaria in Nigeria.
Mortein Nigeria prides itself as the #1 insecticide company that produces best quality product that kills mosquitoes, 100% in the quest to eradicate malaria in Nigeria.
Fight to end malaria.
Let's now get some more insight into the federal government's efforts at addressing the malaria menace, and we are being joined by the Director and Head of Surveillance, Monitoring, Evaluation and Operation Research of the National Malaria Eradication Program, Mr. Chukwu Okoronkwo. Thank you for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's quickly delve into it. As someone who's deeply involved in the fight against malaria, can you give us an assessment of the national efforts to eradicate malaria in Nigeria?
Several things that we do. First, we make sure that we distribute nets, but again, that is dependent on donor support. We also have something that we also, on the preventive aspect, we have what we call seasonal malaria chemo prevention, by which we distribute also preventive medicines to children under 5 years in the areas where we have about rainfall for about 4 months. So we do that, and of course, we also do some scaling up of our case management to all facilities to make sure that malaria commodities are available so that people who have symptoms of malaria can go there to be tested and to be treated. We have, of course, other interventions that we are also implementing, and this goes to some things that are innovative. We just started the indoor residual spray, And we've also started a few other things that are also addressing children under 5 years that are not covered by SMC. So these are the things that we are doing in Nigeria to make sure that we eliminate malaria and reduce the burden of the disease in the country.
All right, so Nigeria is among the 4 African countries with over 50% of malaria deaths in the African continent. Tell us, what should be done as a country to at least reduce the disease burden?
I think we need, just in tune with what is the theme of this year's Malaria Day, which has to do with innovation, and which has also to do with implementing, and then which has also to do with investing. First and foremost, we need to upscale our current interventions because we've not done this up to scale. Apart from this year, there are about 13 states that do not have any form of support, and it just is said that they are starting to get some support from the World Bank and from the Islamic Development Bank. We also need some innovation, innovative means like we're talking about. And one of those innovative means, of course, is this issue of the vaccine that is coming out on board, and we think is going to be part and parcel of the game changer. But let's not get our hopes too high. It is a complementary tool. It is not all the tool that we need. So let's not get our hopes too high. But we need to really invest in malaria prevention and, of course, in the control of malaria in this country if we are to make any significant progress.
So what does the provisional approval recently given by NAFDAC to the malaria vaccine mean in the fight against the disease?
You know, there are 2 types of vaccine. The RTSS vaccine, which already has been approved, and which also Nigeria has applied for, but will not be available until 2024. And then, of course, the Oxford vaccine, which is just coming in, and which, as you've heard, is going to be, of course, looked at by WHO before making this recommendation for approval and for countries to adopt. So for us, we have already started applying for the ones that they have recommended for approval or they have approved. But it's not going to be in the country until 2024, and even at that, it's going to be in a limited number because of production issues, not because we can't afford to distribute, not because of any logistic issues, but because the people who are producing cannot produce a quantity that is needed to meet our demand.
So does this mean that the Ministry of Health doesn't have the whole vaccines on ground? Or should we say that you just have one of these vaccines? And how soon do you think we can begin to see the gains of the vaccines which are talked about?
Again, I want to reiterate the fact that only one of the vaccines which has been approved by WHO, which is the RTSS vaccine, is available now, which we have applied for. But that's going to only be available in Nigeria as from 2024, that's next year. And that is going to be in limited quantities, not sufficient for even one local government. And that is going to be an issue for us. It's not because we cannot be able to deliver it. It's not even because of issues about having to procure, because there are people who are willing to procure, but the problem is the production. Where they are producing for all the countries in the world that need it, Nigeria is only getting a minute part of the numbers they're going to produce. And then they can scale up gradually over the years.
All right, we'll definitely leave it at that. Mr. Chukwu Okoronko, we thank you for your thoughts on the news at 10.
Thank you very much.
The Incorporated Trustees of the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, and the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, the CJID, have asked the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos to determine whether the arbitrary fine of 5 million naira imposed on Channels Television by the NBC, that's the National Broadcasting Commission, is not in breach of the principles of fair hearing and right to access to information by the public. Other plaintiffs want the court to mandate the NBC to reverse the fine immediately. In the originating summons filed on April the 6th by a legal practitioner, Adelanke Aremo, on behalf of the plaintiffs, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the NBC, and the Minister of Information and Culture were listed as the first to third defendants in the summons. Well, the summons listed 2 questions to be determined by the court. 1, whether the wordings of sections 3021 and 381B of the National Broadcasting Code, its interpretation and reliance by the NBC to impose a fine of 5 million naira against Channels Television, and the threat of imposing greater sanctions on the TV station is not inconsistent with section 22 and 39 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. 2. Whether the arbitrary fine of 5 million naira on Channels Television by the NBC under the supervisory control of the Ministry of Information and Culture is not against the doctrine and principles of fair hearing. In documents put before the court, the plaintiffs also say that following the March 22nd interview of the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Dr. Dati Baba Ahmed, on Channels TV, the Director of Media and Publicity of the All Progressives Congress Presidential Campaign Council, Bayo Ononuga, petitioned the NBC against Channels TV, alleging that the station caused its platform to be used to stir or incite insurrection. They further said that upon receipt of the petition and without recourse, invitation or fair hearing afforded to the management of Channels TV, the NBC arbitrarily and unilaterally imposed a 5 million naira fine on March the 27th, allegedly for a severe infraction of the NBC Code. The plaintiffs also stated that the letter of the NBC conveying the fine is vague, as it did not disclose any section of the NBC Code that Channels Television violated. The plaintiffs say, together with several millions of Nigerians, they rely on Channels TV to access information and for news and form opinions on government policies through the station's daily newspaper reviews. The case has since been assigned to Justice Peter Lifu, who has fixed May the 25th for hearing. Let's now head to the nation's capital, and Victor Mathias is standing by to give us the very latest at our Abuja studios. Hello, Victor. Great to have you again.
Hi, Ayo. Good to see you again. Let's kickstart from the Gulf of Guinea Commission meetings taking place in Ghana, where President Muhammadu Buhari has identified regular meetings among the countries that make up the Commission as a critical route towards achieving peace and security in the region. Addressing the summit for the last time as Nigeria's president at the third extraordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the Gulf of Guinea Commission, taking place in Accra, Ghana, President Buhari stressed that the theme of the session, building a safe, secure and prosperous Gulf of Guinea region for sustainable development, is quite apt and significant towards addressing the challenges in the region. According to him, quote, "We must remain committed to our regular GGC summits and the extraordinary sessions and use these deep-seated fundamental platforms to essentially continue to work out key modalities that could afford us the opportunity to discuss, identify, support strategies and develop capacities to achieve peace, security and prosperity in the Gulf of Guinea region," end of quote, reiterating Nigeria's commitment and steps towards fighting maritime insecurity in the Gulf of Guinea. President Buhari encouraged member countries to enact laws against piracy and other criminal acts, as Nigeria has done. He explains that Nigeria will continue to deploy significant resources towards tackling piracy in the Gulf of Guinea, as it did in June 2021 by unveiling $195 million worth of boats, vehicles and aircraft to spearhead the country's fight against piracy in the Gulf of Guinea through the Deep Blue Project. And back home in Nigeria, the Kano Police Command has paraded suspected members of knife-wielding gangs that residents say have been terrorizing residents within the city capital. According to accounts from some victims, the criminals take advantage of the busy roads during rush hour or public gatherings to unleash mayhem. Our correspondent Sadiq Aliu reports.
Kano, the center of commerce in the northwest region, despite the insecurity bothering the region, remained relatively peaceful until the emergence of knife-wielding gangs. It is now difficult to see people walking around using their mobile phones. This is because of the activities of knife-wielding gangs who specialize in phone snatching. It is also a common occurrence to see victims of such incidents at the emergency section of hospitals in the state. Some survive while others don't. Ibrahim Idris, a graduate of Federal Polytechnic, Umar Muhammad, a staff of the National Commission for Museums and Monuments, Atiku Tijani, a physiotherapist at the Amin Kano Teaching Hospital, Muhammad Suleiman of Sharada Quarters, and a 30-year-old tailor, Abdullahi Bala, did not survive the attack by the gang. However, Musa Sani is lucky to survive with injuries on his left arm.
Before I even attempt to bring out the phone which is inside my pocket, which I realize he's looking at my bag because maybe he's thinking that it is inside my bag. So before I even attempted to bring out the phone, so I realized that he just wanted now to stab me on my stomach. So realizing that, promptly I now put my hand so that to prevent him from stabbing into my stomach.
These are some of the members of the gang arrested by the Anti-Deba Division of the Kano State Police Command. Most times they take advantage of political gatherings or rush hour time to unleash mayhem on the public in broad daylight.
I have a knife, but this is the first time I'm using it to rob, and unfortunately I was caught. We met a guy easing himself inside an unfinished building. We robbed him of his phone with our knives.
The police public relations officer calls on the public to help them find other members of the gangs from among the residents of the city.
Of course, we have been advising the members of the public that the issue of security is everybody's business. They need to cooperate with the police in order to have a very safer and secured environment. Whenever they see anything suspicious, suspicious person, suspicious movement, suspicious items, they should immediately report at the nearest police station, or they can contact us through our command emergency numbers.
These gang members may have been arrested and headed to prosecution, but the people of Kano may not be able to rest easy until the gangs are completely eliminated. Sadiq Ilyasu, Channels Television News.
In Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, a police officer is reported to have been killed in a face-off between the police and some hoodlums at Monia area in Akinyele local government area of the state. A statement by the spokesman of the Oyo State Police Command, Adewale Oshifeso, says operatives attached to Monia area command, while on lawful intelligence-led stop and search around a major black spot, were attacked in the line of duty. According to him, the team of operatives on patrol flagged down a Lexus 350 Jeep with a faintly inscribed one-off number, further arousing suspicion from the officers on watch, adding that the occupants of the vehicle did not heed the police directive, and this led to a chase by the officers in a bid to establish further clarity of facts. He adds that the Lexus Jeep veered off the road to a nearby garage, driving directly into the waiting hands of hoodlums who were suspected to be collaborators in the criminal process, thereby not only obstructing the officers from discharging their duties, but also aiding the escape of the SUV and its occupants. Mr. Oshifeso explains that the hoodlums then attacked the officers, forcefully dragging a rifle from one of them, and this led to a shot being discharged from the barrel during the process of the struggle, killing an officer in the fracas that ensued. While still in Oyo State, the popular plank market in the Bodija area of Ibadan, the state capital, has been gutted by fire. A combined team of federal and state fire service men rushed to the scene to try to contain the inferno. There was a heavy downpour at the time the fire was raging, but rescue efforts went on as the fire service men battled to put out the fire. The cause of the inferno could not be ascertained, but traders were seen assisting the fire service men to minimize the damage. Now, the Deputy Chief Whip of the House of Representatives, Mrs. Nkiru Kaonye-Georgia, says the current administration has shown good commitment to the 35% affirmation for women through the efforts of the First Lady. She was speaking at an Eid luncheon hosted by the First Lady, Mrs. Aisha Buhari, to celebrate the end of Ramadan fast at the State House in Abuja.
The red carpet is laid ready to receive guests as they make their way in. Taking their seats, the guests await the arrival of the First Lady. She enters the hall and is directly ushered to her seat. In attendance are the wives of governors, the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, National Women Leader of the All Progressives Congress APC, partners of Aisha Buhari Foundation, and families came together to mark the last 8 years of valuable contribution to underprivileged Nigerians and to celebrate the end of the Ramadan at the State House in Abuja. The event provided an opportunity for the women to share their gratitude and outline their desire for more to be done towards the 35% mark.
We thank you from the Parliament for giving us the support, because you moved around to make sure that we have additional seats for the women. Even though it didn't succeed, but you succeeded in our hearts. The seed you have sown, it might look like it has not germinated, But come back in a few years from now, you'll see a big tree of women all over Nigeria. I can assure you.
The wife of the president of Nigeria, Aisha Buhari, took to the podium to appreciate the efforts of her partners in health, education, and other areas. She also solicits the cooperation of the partners for the next administration.
I would like to appreciate and thank all, more especially the wife of the vice president, the wives of the executive governors, and all our friends and associates that have contributed to success of our journey in the last 8 years.
Partners of the Aisha Buhari Foundation are happy with the bit they could contribute to the valuable achievements, as they assured her of their support for the incoming administration.
And that's it from the nation's capital, Abuja. It's back to Anne with the latest from the world of business.
Thank you, Victor. Hello and welcome to Business News. Nigeria's economy could grow at a slower pace this year due to the impact of an acute scarcity of the Naira notes in the first quarter, and that's according to a research arm of the credit ratings agency, Fitch Ratings. In its Africa Monthly Report Outlook, Fitch Solutions expects the economy to grow by only 2.3% this year, down from 3.1% in the year 2022. The ratings agency also explains that CBN's cashless policy created acute cash shortages in the first quarter of this year and negatively affected commercial operations. Meanwhile, Fitch Ratings has forecast Nigeria's crude output that it will stagnate at an average of 1.5 million barrels per day this year, following a record 14.0% decline in the year 2022. The value of outstanding corporate bonds listed on the FMDQ Securities Exchange rose by 50.9% year-on-year to 1.49 trillion naira in February 2023, from 993.57 billion naira recorded in the same period in 2022. Let's talk about the breakdown of listings. It indicates that total value of corporate bonds issued and listed on the FMDQ exchange in the month of February alone stood at 115 billion naira, bucking the trend recorded in December 2022 and in January 2023, when there was no listing on the exchange. FMDQ's monthly financial market report for the period also shows that figure rose by 6.9% month-on-month, coming from 1.40 trillion naira recorded in the month of January. Leading Pan-African banking group EcoBank today introduced its new group chief executive officer, Jeremy Awori, to the market during his visit to the Nigerian exchange. Leading a delegation from the group's board, Mr. Awori met with executive officer of the NGX, Temi Pupola. He joined the stockbrokers to ring the gong, singing and signaling the close of the day's trading session. The company listed on the exchange, ETI, says that it will continue to deliver value to their shareholders while remaining accountable to their depositors.
Executives of EcoBank Group joined brokers at the Nigerian Exchange Limited for a symbolic event marking the end of trading for the day. The bank says the visit to the trading floor is another important milestone towards the group's continued objectives of increasing shareholders' value. The newly announced Group Chief Executive Officer, Jeremy Awori, says participating in the closing gong ceremony at the Nigerian Exchange is a great honor for him and the bank.
It's indeed our honor to be here with you today.
He goes ahead to do the honors.
Like Eurobonds putting Nigerian corporates on the map. They're listing in our market, they're listing in a few other African markets. They're doing a lot in sustainability, and even the way they drive the bank strategy, very in line with what we would expect of responsible and sustainable companies at the exchange. So we applaud and welcome that very much. The thrust of what we do is to try and increase our contribution to the group's earnings, and we believe that we're very well positioned to contribute significantly to the Nigerian market.
The bank's executives speak on the huge potentials of the African market, the enormous opportunities it presents, and the bank's strategy to achieve its targets.
We've got banking operations in 33 countries, right? So we've got the biggest spread of any bank on the continent, and that gives us a unique position and a unique advantage. We've got a very strong technological platform that allows us to take banking services very quickly and very deeply into many markets. And Nigeria is no exception, where, we've got a lot of customers here. So what are we looking for? We're looking to grow our business. We're looking to provide financial services, not just to retail customers, but also to SME and to corporate clients. When we talk about SMEs, we see a huge opportunity around the technology space, whether it's fintech, agri-tech, health tech.
What we plan to do is to ensure that we open accounts and wallets for over 100 million Nigerians and Africans over the next 5 years. So with digital onboarding, you can easily achieve that. So the idea is to go digital to enable people to onboard without even coming into the branch.
The shares of EcoBank Transnational Incorporated, parent company of the EcoBank Group, are traded on 3 stock exchanges, the NGX, the Ghana Stock Exchange in Accra, Ghana, and in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. The bank says it is determined to double down efforts to support the growth of EcoBank Nigeria, a core business for the EcoBank Group.
And talking about the stock market, it resumed from the Eid holiday with positive sentiments. It means the color is green today. The total volume jumped by more than 240%. Laddie Williams has the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, the first trading day for the last week in April kicks off with a positive close. And it's a good one, over 0.5%. See the all-share index, 51,681 points. And we see the market cap sitting at 28.140 trillion now. Let's look at the activity chart there. We see it's all green. A big buy pressure we're seeing in the market today. Volume, 2.09 billion units of stocks, valued at 8.84 billion naira. We see big deals compared to the last trading day, 6,404. Let's look at the top gainers now. We see Japan go topping that counter, 33 kobo, up a big 10%. Honeywell flour there, 2 naira 55 kobo, up 9.91%. Let's look at the losers counter. There we have it, Wapik there, topping that counter, 38 kobo, down 7.32%. So positive way to start the week, even though we had a negative close last week. Let's see if the bulls can sustain this momentum. Now that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Laddie Williams. It's back to you.
It's business news for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. The rest of the news at 10 continues now with Ayotunde.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you so much, Anne. While the Nigerian government pursues more investments in the Nigerian economy, the Chinese government has announced plans to commence a trial of barter trade and investments with Nigeria and other African countries. Speaking at the China-Nigeria Agricultural Meeting, the president of the China-Africa Economic and Trade Promotion Council, Mr. Zhu Jiangping, says the pilot phase of the program will offer a platform for assembling, selling, and investing in China.
It's the China-Nigeria Agricultural Matchmaking Meeting. Gathered here are officials from both countries. The meeting examines how trade can be more beneficial to both countries using policies and approaches that will offer new opportunities to the people.
Nigeria has made it very, very easy for Chinese investors to go to Nigeria and enter Nigeria. Without even coming through the embassy of Nigeria, you will land in Abuja or Lagos or Port Harcourt and find your way in what we call visa on arrival.
The executive director of the Nigeria Export Promotion Council uses the opportunity to market Nigerian products to the Chinese government, while an official of the central bank lists interventions by the Apex Bank to grow key commodities in the country.
I know you've heard so many stories about Nigeria, but I'm telling you the opportunities are more than any other country in Africa. And we're actually the giant of Africa. In terms of market, the market is there. In terms of products, the products is there. In terms of standards, standards are there. And of course, there are several government regulations that are to protect investors and ensure that you get value for your money.
Dedicated export terminal financing is very key because there's no nation that grows without ports. And we're trying to look for investment area and people that can invest in export terminal. We have over 15 terminals, export terminals. Some are moribund. We won't mind to see investment from China.
Trade businesses come with lots of benefits, and the Chinese government plans to cash in on this. The latest of its plans is to commence a barter arrangement for Nigeria and other African countries.
Business between Nigeria and China has been encouraging so far. We hope to improve on this going forward through barter trade system that will be beneficial to both countries.
A memorandum of understanding between Nigeria and China is then signed. This new partnership is expected to boost trade, create jobs, and support technology transfer between Nigeria and China while improving economic growth.
US President Joe Biden has announced his re-election campaign, setting the stage for a possible rematch with his Republican predecessor, Donald Trump. Mr. Biden says he will seek another term in 2024, once again choosing Vice President Kamala Harris as his running mate. In a video address released by his new campaign team, President Biden reiterates that abortion rights, defense of democracy, voting rights, and the social safety net will be among the most important issues on the ballot next year. Here's Simon Puser with more on this and other international stories in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. US President Joe Biden has formally confirmed that he will run for re-election in a campaign video release setting up a likely rematch with predecessor Donald Trump.
Freedom. Personal freedom is fundamental to who we are as Americans.
The video sharply outlines America's culture war. He said it was a pivotal moment with freedoms and rights under threat.
This shouldn't be a red or blue issue. To protect our rights, to make sure that everyone in this country is treated equally and that everyone is given a fair shot at making it.
Vice President Kamala Harris will once again be his running mate.
That's why I'm running for re-election. Because I know America.
Mr. Biden, at the age of 80, is already the oldest president in US history.
I know we're still a country that believes in honesty and respect.
And is likely to face questions about his age throughout the campaign. He would be 86 after finishing a second full term in 2029. Reacting to the news, former President Donald Trump called Mr. Biden's first term a failure. A ceasefire in Sudan appears to be holding, although there have been reports of new gunfire and shelling. It is the fourth effort to stop the fighting, which began on the 15th of April, with previous truces not observed.
We've also continued to engage directly with General Burhan and General Hamedi.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the 72-hour truce had been agreed between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces after 48 hours of negotiations. Meanwhile, the UK is beginning a large-scale evacuation of British people from Sudan. Families with children, the elderly and people with medical conditions will be prioritised on RAF flights leaving from an airfield near the capital, Khartoum.
I'm very pleased that a ceasefire has been announced by the leadership of the factions on the ground, and therefore we are initiating an evacuation plan.
Security sources say Turkish police have detained 110 people over alleged militant ties with a pro-Kurdish lawmaker, saying politicians, lawyers and journalists were among those held. The operation was focused on Diyarbakir, the largest city in mainly Kurdish southeast Turkey, and targeted people across 21 provinces, including Istanbul, accused of links to the outlawed Kurdish Workers' Party militant group. It comes less than 3 weeks before presidential and parliamentary votes that represent the biggest electoral challenge President Tayyip Erdogan has faced since his AK party first came to power in 2002. It's emerged that Britain's Prince William settled a phone hacking claim against Rupert Murdoch's UK newspaper arm in 2020 for a very large sum after a secret deal struck with Buckingham Palace. The papers were shown at a High Court hearing in which Prince Harry is suing News Group newspapers over alleged unlawful information gathering. They say there was a secret agreement between Buckingham Palace and NGN that prevented Harry from making a claim. But NGN says Harry has run out of time and denies any agreement existed. The case is one of 3 major allegations of unlawful information gathering that the Duke of Sussex has made against tabloid newspapers. The 37th edition of the famous Marathon des Sables is taking place in scorching heat in the Moroccan desert. In the women's race, Ragnar Debats is 17 minutes ahead after finishing the 31.7-kilometre second stage. Meanwhile, in the men's, it's the El Morabiti brothers who are leading. The race in the Sahara Desert consists of 6 stages and approximately 250 kilometres of running. And the toymaker Mattel has introduced its first Barbie with Down syndrome in a bid to make its famous doll more inclusive. In a statement, the company said it had worked with the National Down Syndrome Society in the United States to make the doll, which has a shorter frame and longer torso than its other Barbies. The new doll's face is also a rounder shape and has almond-shaped eyes, smaller ears and a flat nasal bridge.
I love it! What do you think? Nice, yeah.
According to the firm, the goal is to enable all children to see themselves in Barbie, while also encouraging children to play with dolls who do not look like themselves. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Let's now join Kelly Egiga to tell us the very latest in the world of sports. Kelly.
And thanks, Ayo. Time to talk sports. Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta wants absolute perfection in his team's game against Manchester City in what is a crucial title clash. The league leaders play away at the Etihad on Wednesday night, hoping to regain their grip on the title race after securing draws in their last 3 encounters. Arsenal have not won at Manchester City in the league since 2015.
We have worked in their threats as well as we have worked in their weaknesses, and we know where they are. The issue with a team that City is that it starts with the goalkeeper, and he's a threat when the ball is with him, you know, and you have to control every single one. But just focus on us. We know what they want to do, what they're going to try to do. They can do various things. They can play with a box inside. They can play with a diamond. They can build the game with 3. They can be asymmetric on one side. They can put Bernardo on the right and then play a diamond there and put Walker higher. They can do so many things that you have to be adaptable. So I think you have to focus on certain principles to try to take the game where you want.
Mikel Arteta there speaking ahead of the encounter. On the flip side of things, Pep Guardiola does not believe Wednesday's clash with Arsenal will decide the outcome of the title race, but wants Manchester City to take their destiny in their own hands. And City unbeaten in 16 games in all competitions since losing to Tottenham Hotspur in early February, with 13 wins and 3 draws during that run.
And now we know exactly what we are playing for. So it's many years, many months to arrive in this part of the decisive of the league, to have the chance in our hands. Of course, they have the chance in their hands too, because if they win, they will depend on them. You know, the destiny will be in their hands. But if you win, definitely the destiny will be in our hands, and we win this opportunity for tomorrow. It's really important, not decisive, because there's still many tough games for both sides. We have more games to play, but we cannot deny how important it is.
Well, let's bring you up to speed with some games played earlier today. Wolves has taken a huge step towards securing their Premier League status for next season with a 2-0 victory over Crystal Palace. In the other game, Aston Villa moved up to 5th in the Premier League and leapfrogged Tottenham with a 1-0 win over Fulham at Villa Park as they stretched the unbeaten run to 10 games. Meanwhile, substitute Jamie Vardy scored a late equalizer to salvage a Premier League point for Leicester City at Leeds United, keeping both sides firmly in the relegation zone. Away from football, Russian and Belarusian players have signed declarations that will clear them to compete as neutrals in this year's Wimbledon Championships at the All England Club, while flags of Russia and Belarus will be banned. Wimbledon announced last month that it had lifted its ban, which prevented athletes from the two countries playing last year following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February. And that's Sports News tonight. Thanks indeed for watching. I am Kelly Egiga. It's back to you, Ayo, for the rest of the news.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And the main news again. APC chieftains today met with President-elect Bola Tinubu in Abuja, assuring Nigerians that the incoming administration will not fail to deliver on its manifesto of renewed hope. As the United Nations today commemorated World Malaria Day, the World Health Organization confirmed that the R21 malaria vaccine provisionally approved by Nigeria's drug regulatory authorities still needs to undergo more trials. Also, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, and the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development sued the National Broadcasting Commission, President Muhammadu Buhari, and the Minister of Information, Mr. Lai Mohammed, over the 5 million naira fine imposed on Channels Television. And in the United States, President Joe Biden has formally announced that he will seek re-election in a campaign video release, setting up a likely rematch with his predecessor, Donald Trump. That's the news at 10. Many thanks for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun. Have a good night.